Back in the 1890s, as white men were moving west, they crowded the Indians into a smaller and smaller part of the United States. Hunger and disease and broken government promises pushed those native North Americans to the point that many felt only the gods could help them. And the Sioux especially embraced something called the ghost dance religion. The ensuing Indian dance ceremonies and the growing militancy alarmed the Indian agent at the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, and he asked the federal government to send in the troops. The Ghost Dance War took the lives of 153 Sioux, half of them women and children, in the last major conflict between Indians and whites. It took the lives of the leader of the Sioux, Bigfoot, and the aging old patriarch, Chief Sitting Bull. It was called Massacre at Wounded Knee. Some 80 years later comes the second battle of Wounded Knee. About 200 Indians scuffled with 50 law officers, the Indians protesting the fact a white man accused of an Indian murder is charged only with manslaughter. In Rapid City, 41 Indians are arrested, charged with committing acts of vandalism. The others move on to Wounded Knee and take the settlement by force. They occupy the town for 70 days in one of the most bizarre Indian uprisings of all time.
They're gonna have to put them back in.
Yeah, you better tell them that.
You gotta put the medical supplies in, and the attorneys are allowed to go in.
Could you serve him with an order? We'd like you to...
No, we don't need to do that. I'll take care of it.
Well, I'm not taking it back. I gave it to you to serve under the orders.
Well, you don't tell me what to do.
No, I'm not telling you what to do. You don't have to serve if you don't want to. That's your responsibility.
Why don't you shut your mouth and let me take care of it?
No, we're just asking you to serve. This is not for the record.
People of all races have said to me that they're very sympathetic with problems that we face here in this country. Now is an opportunity for all races of Americans to support the Indian, physically by their presence here on this march.
Some 500 demonstrators, the rebels and their supporters, stage a protest march at Wounded Knee.
I don't think that the sympathy of the American people towards the plight of the Indians can be best expressed by condoning the acts of the criminal element.
The thing that happened many years ago there at Wounded Knee has reflected again. And the Indian wants what is his.
The Second Battle of Wounded Knee ends with the rebels fighting among themselves, and a new generation of native children is left to deal with the problems that confounded their fathers. People said over the years that someday we'd run out, but at first almost everyone thought, no gasoline? Impossible. First, the hint of shortage in the summer. Then the real crisis, when the Arabs slap on an oil embargo. With or without energy, the U.S. has problems, environmental problems. The president of Friends of the Earth, David Brower.
As we get more and more concerned with where our oil is coming from and how much we're going to use and have available, there's one thing that we need to bear in mind, that in each barrel of Middle East crude, there's about as much as your little thumbnail of mercury, which isn't much in a barrel of crude. But when we start burning billions of barrels of crude every year, that's putting thousands of tons of mercury into the environment, and nobody really likes methylmercury poisoning.
The automobile accounts for 21% of total U.S. energy consumption, and the man who pioneered the Lear jet, William Lear, is looking for a new solution.
Well, I'll tell you why I started to build a car. I was bored, and if I had to sit on the beach, I think I'd kill myself. And after having built the Lear jet and having nothing to do, there was only one thing left, and that was to find something that was a real difficult project that would take quite a long time. And the steam car seemed to be that.
The key to the low emissions, this device, is the so-called external combustor, which differs in two very important aspects from the internal combustion engine, which is presently driving our piston engine cars. One of these is that it's inherent to a piston engine car that it operates with not enough air to complete the combustion. The external combustor, however, operates with more air.
Lear's hope is a vapor turbine engine, but these old beauties operated on straight steam made from water. Lear's vapor comes from a magic formula he calls Learium, a fluoridated hydrocarbon that heats to 600 degrees Fahrenheit and produces 125 horsepower in a Lear engine. A stronger brew, he says, is necessary for trucks.
In 1977, it will start production on steam cars, and I think within 10 years, 75% of the cars on the road will be steam cars.
Bill Lear died a few years later. His dream of the successful steam car still only a dream.
And will burn less fuel, and certainly will be pollution-free.
And the fumes keep rising, the smog increasing, the cars proliferating, the people gasping. The Belmont Stakes, the third leg of the Triple Crown of racing, and Secretariat, ridden by Canadian Ron Turcotte, is the favorite. 8 times in history, one horse has won the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont. And they're off. There's owner Penny Tweedy. Secretariat does it in a breeze, winning by an incredible 31 lengths. Secretariat, his nickname is Sexy, is named Horse of the Year, syndicated for a record $6 million, and retired to stud. Ah, there's Prince Philip. It's a royal engagement, wouldn't you know? Actually, Queen Elizabeth's only daughter was engaged 6 weeks ago, but it was kept a royal secret while a royal investigation was conducted into the royal suitability of Princess Anne's choice, handsome Mark Phillips. Anne and Mark got to know each other at the Olympics in Mexico, where Mark was on the British equestrian team. He may be a great horseman, but it seems the princess is determined to keep hoisting the bar. Anne gets an extra £50,000 from the British taxpayers each year after her marriage, bringing her annual income to $90,000. With Mark's army pay, they should be able to make ends meet. Oh, young love, it triumphs over all. She's 34 years old, Henry Fonda's little girl Jane. She already has her first Oscar for Clute, and she's played out her sex kitten fantasies in real life with French director Roger Vadim and on celluloid in the film Barbarella. In 1973, she marries political activist Tom Hayden, a man she worked with in the protest movement against the war in Vietnam. She and Donald Sutherland staged their anti-war skits close to military bases, the peace movement's answer to Bob Hope.
Tell me, what does it mean? Foxtrot, Tango, Alpha. Lead the army.
Donald Sutherland and myself put together the FTA show at the request of GIs who were tired of racist, pro-military, anti-woman, discriminatory kind of entertainment that they'd been getting via the USO.
Nothing could be finer than to be an Indochina making money.
I'm not a politician, I'm an actress. I think I'm in the communication business like you are. I mean, that's, you know, I think that...
But you are a politician.
I am not well, we're all a politician. I mean, to not vote is a political act. You know, the way we treat the person we live with is a political act.
Storming the White House.
Oh, in that case, I better call out the 3rd Marines.
You can't, Richard.
Why not?
It is the 3rd Marine.
The last thing that the Marines see before they go over is a live rabbit having its insides ripped open with a knife and the guts thrown out to the audience. This is our Marines before they get sent over to Vietnam. Makes it easier to kill people, makes it easier to treat people as subhuman. I think it's heartbreaking. I think it's heartbreaking. I don't think we should ever accuse the pilots or the soldiers who have to fight where they have their own problem, you know, the burden that they have to bear about what's going on over there. I think the fault lies in the people who created the policy, who created the war, who are profiting from the war, who are deciding what kind of orders they're going to be given and sending them over there. Those are the people that I point the finger at.
The end of 25 years of war, 12 of them involving the U.S., comes on January 27th with the signing of a document entitled the agreement on ending the war and restoring peace in Vietnam. The war cost the U.S. more than 45,000 lives, $150 billion, and for the foreseeable future, its role as moral leader in the West. Long expected, the end comes almost as anticlimax. The goal was peace with honor, and it has been realized, says Richard Nixon.
We today have concluded an agreement to end the war and bring peace with honor in Vietnam and in Southeast Asia. The following statement is being issued at this moment in Washington and Hanoi. At 12:30 Paris time today, January 23, 1973, the agreement on ending the war and restoring peace in Vietnam was initialed by Dr. Henry Kissinger on behalf of the United States and Special Advisor Lee Duc-Tho on behalf of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam.
I don't think there'll be ever anything to celebrate.
I think it's a war that we never got involved in.
Most people never felt involved in this war to begin with, except for the very few of us who had relatives and friends who were fighting.
The U.S. lists 1,300 men as missing in action. North Vietnam finds only 562 prisoners of war.
Brings there a man with soul so dead who never to himself has said, "This is my home, my native land." And I thank God that I am home. Thank you very much.
A nation divided by the war is heartened by the sight of the returning POWs, some imprisoned as long as 8 years. The POWs have their moment in the spotlight, but they will soon join the army of the forgotten. No one wants to remember a lost war.
The POWs have gained the spotlight. I know we have invited St. Albans to send out their paraplegic vets and those who have suffered wounds and never will be able to join the ranks of a normal life.
Do you think that those veterans have been neglected, those who are not prisoners?
Definitely, and partly because the controversy over the war.
In fact, we know we haven't won, that we're still there, the Vietnamese people are still suffering incredibly, that the issue of amnesty is going to be a long, hard fight.
And in Vietnam, the once tranquil life of the peasants seems gone forever. Disaster in Nicaragua. Managua in flames. For the third time in 87 years, the capital is hit by an earthquake, this one almost leveling the city. Within minutes, 70% of the city is destroyed. Uncounted thousands dead, 20,000 injured. 2/3 of the 325,000 population is homeless. The army moves in to aid the refugees and to maintain order. There is not time nor functioning equipment, even for mass burials. The bodies of the dead are burned.
The woman looked under my bed and my shoes weren't where I left them, so it was just a matter of fishing around until I found something. And stopped down the hall to see a friend of mine who was also in the hospital. He was pinned under his closet, but I couldn't help him and told him I would send someone to let them know that he was there and to help him out. And I walked down the hall to the hospital, which I guess is about to the nursery, which is about half a city block. And the nurse said to me, "Take your baby and go."
Managua sits atop a seismological fault, which runs along the western edge of North and Central America. And in January, the Nicaraguan government begins, with massive foreign help, to rebuild once again. In Chile, riots cap 3 years of Marxist rule, and the resignation of President Salvador Allende is demanded.
It would be a brutal human drama, implying the destruction of social relations. I'm not talking about social classes. I'm talking about relations within the same family. Fathers on one side, children on the other. Brother against brother. For this reason, I've always said that the great majority don't want this to happen. But we do have the war lovers, who are typically fascist in their methods and tactics.
The Army, Navy, Air Force, and National Police staged the coup that ends 46 years of democratic rule in Chile. The military moves in. The palace is surrounded. The tanks are rolling. In the burning palace, the troops find Allende's body, slumped on a red sofa, his face partially destroyed by bullet wounds from a carbine, a gift from Fidel Castro. The new government says he killed himself. The leader of the coup, General Augusto Pinochet Ugarte, says the country was in chaos. It could not continue. So dies the longest-lived democracy in South America. Europe goes car crazy, and 3 new countries come into the now prosperous common market. The addition of Ireland, Denmark, and Great Britain makes it a 9-country customs union now. It had seemed inevitable ever since World War II, but in the long years of Charles de Gaulle's opposition, many wondered if Britain would ever be included. In Paris, Jean-Jacques Savant-Schreiber.
But I believe in a series of federations. The world will be 5, 6, or 7 federations. The people of Europe, the Germans, the British, the French, the Belgians, and the small countries like Luxembourg also, taking conscience of their role, not against America, but their world role. How can Europe balance America? I am not a European nationalist. I do not think that the answer to all the problems will come from a building of the Europe. I think Europe can only give an example by federation, which it is doing. The industries of Europe, the market of Europe, the common market, the currency approach of Europe, the speedways of Europe. Here in Lorraine, you have an example. This speedway that you see was lagging, staggering for years and years. And now in 2 years it has been built. And now Europe, let's say it's France and Germany, for instance, over the border, through speedways, through canals, all sorts of communications, will be only one commercial and economic country. The language will be different, but it will be one country, one land. And then Europe can give the example of a real federation. Then I think the importance of that is not only for Europe, it is for all other regions of the world.
It's World Series time for Reggie Jackson.
Because I know Tom Seaver's going to be getting plenty of rest and be eating a big steak and reading the scouting report and being tough. We're going to have to be a little bit tougher.
This tearful Oakland fan, after the 5th game, rebounds with his heroes. But the Mets are still favored by long shot bettors, people like New York's mayor, John Lindsay.
Never worried at all. We only at the bottom of the 5th, and you watch the Mets go. They're just getting warmed up.
How much baseball have you learned in the past 4 years?
Well, I've learned enough to know that the Mets are the best. They just need a little time this game. That's all.
A's owner Charles Finley.
With the A's leading 4-0, the 7th game of this World Series, I'm feeling extremely happy.
Jackson's homer is one of 2 for the A's in that final game. The A's win 5-2. And the crowd goes wild. Jackson, despite his squabbles with A's owner Charlie Finley, ends the year as the most valuable player in the American League, the most valuable of the series. The 36th President of the United States, the one-time Senate wheeler-dealer, the president most associated with an unpopular war, Lyndon Johnson, dies within days of its official end. He'd been notified by President Nixon that the ceasefire in Vietnam was about to be announced. In the days following the assassination of John Kennedy, it seems Lyndon Baines Johnson can do no wrong. But by the time he leaves the White House 5 years later, after deciding not to try for re-election, it seems he can do nothing right. The people he tried to release from the shackles of poverty are burning down the cities. Johnson's great talent was in one-to-one communication, convincing a powerful foe. His speeches, no matter the content, never seemed to excite.
But there is a larger truth. We have proved that great progress is possible. And if our efforts continue, and if our will is strong, and if our hearts are right, and if courage remains our constant companion, then, my fellow Americans, I am confident we shall overcome.
but I thought he was a very earnest and conscientious person, and I think that he did a tremendous amount for minorities and for the poor.
He did very well. I'm just sorry about what he did overseas, that's all.
He just misjudged, you know, but in general he was a good president.
They got more bills passed than any president, past or present. He was the best president, even better than Roosevelt, and he was one of the greatest.
Lyndon Baines Johnson, dead at 64. The Spanish-born son of an art teacher, Pablo Picasso, dies at 91. When he painted his first oil, a picture of a bull ring, he was only 9.
When I was a child, my mother said to me, if you become a soldier, you will be a general. If you become a monk, you will end up as the Pope. Instead, I became a painter and wound up as Picasso. How sad for a painter who loves blondes not to be able to put them in a painting because they don't harmonize with a basket of fruit. How terrible for a painter who hates apples to be forced to use them all the time because they go well with the carpet. I put whatever I please in my paintings.
His best-known work, Guernica, depicts the slaughter of unarmed civilians by fascist planes during the Spanish Civil War.
My greatest hope is that my work may have contributed to the prevention of future wars.
He came to admire the communists who served in Spain's defeated Republican Army, and he joined the Communist Party in 1944. Despite the fact, no display of his paintings was allowed in Russia until after Stalin's death. When Picasso died, he'd painted some 6,000 pictures and had earned more than $1 million. He was prolific in other ways as well, siring 5 children by 4 of the 7 women he lived with at one time or another.
I do not care about the approbation of future generations. I have dedicated my life to freedom, and I want to continue being free, which means that I do not worry what will be said about me. Basically, I'm very curious. My curiosity is greater than that of any other man. I'm curious about every aspect, moment, and phenomenon of life. I'm curious about every dream. My curiosity crosses over every frontier of curiosity.
There is no one here beside me, and my problems have...
There was, of course, a time when Bette Midler was all alone. But then, whoops, up she burbled from Manhattan's Continental Baths as she found the secret. The more outrageous I was, she says, the more they liked it. Bette calls her style trash with flash, a little Streisand, a little Joplin, a little Judy Garland. A critic calls her Dorothy Parker in drag, but she's not really any of those people.
It is very exciting. It's the most exciting part is when you have a good time doing what you've been trying to do. That's the most exciting part. When you do it correctly and wonderfully, and they enjoy it. That's really exciting.
Her recognition as the best new artist is hard to understand if you've not seen her. You can't get the flavor of her irreverence, her teasing, taunting way of shocking when she's cleaned up for television. But Bette Midler knows how to keep an audience awake.
The last building on the left is the Watergate office building in this investigation.
The old Watergate.
It actually happened in 1972. In 73, even Richard Nixon wants the facts.
The judicial process is moving ahead as it should, and I shall aid it in all appropriate ways and have so informed the appropriate authorities. As I have said before, and have said throughout this entire matter, all government employees, and especially White House staff employees, are expected fully to cooperate in this matter.
I condemn any attempts to cover up in this case, no matter who is involved.
The public watches spellbound as the Senate committee headed by Democrat Sam Ervin begins to unravel the whole sordid affair.
As the court resort to burglary for the purpose of getting that the witness produced in obedience to the subpoena due case taken.
People were from the diplomas, from the White House.
Yes, but we had a man passing secrets to the Soviet government.
Well, Ellsberg's psychiatrist wasn't doing that.
A little-known senator from Connecticut, Noel Weicker, emerges as the spokesman for responsible Republicans.
The spirit of getting at the truth, which slowly but surely has been building in this country, whether it's been by the citizenry or by senators, it now has everybody in its grip. And believe me, there will be no cover-up. We're going to have that truth. We're going to have that story.
David Weiss, author of The Politics of Lying.
There's no question that the Watergate is just the latest example of a process, and the process is the belief that it's all right for government to lie in some kind of higher interest. And the process has resulted in a loss of confidence of the people of this country in their government.
We're Haldeman and Ehrlichman, Mitchell and Dean. The way we've been treated is really obscene. To think that a bug worth hardly a shrug could end up by getting us tossed in the jug. We all got the gate.
These people weren't going to persuade America to their point of view. They were going to order America to their point of view. Well, they can take that philosophy and go jump in the lake. Go right down the list, whether it's freedom of the press. And if you read the memorandum as to how they're going to go ahead and swing the press around to their point of view by utilization of either the IRS or the FCC or the Justice Department, whether it's invasion of privacy, our Fourth Amendment, good grief. It happened all over the lot. People's homes, people's offices, breaking and entering, mail covers, opening of mail, wiretapping, just rampant.
Meantime, the Watergate grand jury is back in session, calling dirty tricks expert Donald Segretti.
Appropriate time for me to discuss anything regarding this matter. In fact, I think...
White House Appointment Secretary Dwight Chapin. The President's personal lawyer, Herbert Kalmbach. Jeb Stuart Magruder from CREEP, the Committee to Re-elect the President.
I have lots to talk about with people over the White House.
Nixon top aide Bob Haldeman.
When the truth is known on all of this, that...
And John Ehrlichman. Attorney General Richard Kleindienst. The former Attorney General John Mitchell. John Dean, seen here with Mo, his blonde wife. And the lady who explains how one of the White House tapes got accidentally erased. That's what she said. Nixon's secretary, Rosemary Wood. A Tin Pan Alley version by a congressman.
Come and play spy with me down at the old Watergate. Come, 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 love and lie with me down at the old Watergate. See the little German band, Ehrlichman and Haldeman. Don't Martha Mitchell look great? Come, 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 don't be shy with me. I'll have the whole FBI with me. Down at the old water, we'll make the police blotter. Down at the old Watergate.
The Nixon White House has an enemies list. One of those on it is Tony Randall.
Peace. And I saw the FBI report on me. It said, we have nothing on this man, but he's been active in peace. That's something against you. And Jack Anderson had in his column some time ago that the Secret Service had me on their list of assassins.
Of assassins?
Suhurst? Assassins, yes. So we're dealing with crazy people. Real nuts. There's no question about it. Nuts.
Senator Weicker.
There's, to me, you see, the far greater tragedy, far greater than any individual guilt or innocence from the outset. As you know, my committee's been involved, not with individual guilt or innocence. That's the job of the Special Prosecutor of the House Judiciary Committee as it relates to the President. But the institutions of this land. What do you think, if you took all the names away from that transcript, and you took all the places and the times away, and you read that to a youngster, after you were all through, what do you think that youngster would think of the people and the places that occurred in that transcript? And you'd say, that's pretty bad. Well, that's not the way we used to look at the White House. I'll put it that way. It's not the way I looked at it.
Another drama is playing almost as a sidelight to the Watergate affair. The case of Nixon's vice president, Spiro Agnew, shown here on his visit to Greece, the land of his ancestors. He's a big hit in Greece.
And I can only say,
And he's a hit on the Republican banquet circuit.
Let me convey the President's regrets that he could not be with you tonight. But you see, one of us has to be in the office when Martha calls.
And we had the Spiro Agnew watch. Even Ethel Kennedy wore one.
Take that one off. My wife gave it to me. She might complain. People sometimes ask what Democratic ticket I would like to see emerge from their convention in Miami after all these struggles and deliberations. Well, it's really none of my business, my Republican friends, but if you pressed me, I'd have to say that I preferred a Humphrey Muskie ticket. After all, why break up a losing combination?
Even the vice president's tennis game made news in those warm, sunny days before the Justice Department spoiled the fun, charging him with accepting bribes while governor of Maryland.
I categorically and flatly deny the assertions that have been made by the prosecutors with regard to their contentions of bribery and extortion on my part.
He was stupid by admitting it. If I was him, I would just say, I never knew nothing about all that, and I would have kept on getting more money, because I'm a cheater, too. I would have kept cheating. That's what I would have done.
Despite his denials, Agnew resigns and pleads no contest to one charge of tax evasion. After extensive congressional hearings, Gerald Ford, a Republican congressman from Michigan, is named the new vice president, the first to be appointed in U.S. history. He says he'll just serve out Agnew's term and then retire.
This is more important than I am. I have a very firm answer. I have no intention of being a candidate for any political office in 1976.
So much for good intentions.
I'm ready to go. It's a long way.
There is great joy in Israel on its 25th anniversary, May 14th, celebrated with a rereading of the words of David Ben-Gurion, his proclamation establishing the first modern Jewish state. It was 4,000 years earlier, according to Genesis, when God told Abraham, "Go forth from your country, and I will make of you a great nation." For 3 years, Egypt's President Anwar Sadat has threatened war to reclaim the Sinai, lost in the humiliating Six-Day War of 1967. He makes his move on Yom Kippur. For the Arabs, it is Ramadan, the holy month when warriors who die go immediately to heaven. Israel's crack Air Force was a deciding factor in previous Arab-Israeli clashes. Now it runs into the Soviets' deadly SAM missiles, and a fourth of Israel's planes are quickly destroyed. In the beginning, the Arabs are ecstatic with the scent of victory, but the self-congratulation proves premature. In 18 days of fierce fighting, the killed and wounded number 8,000 Egyptians, the same number of Syrians, only a third as many Israelis. Israel's Air Force is still a factor. The Israelis first push the Syrians back almost to Damascus, and then they turn their attention on the Egyptians. Israel sends hundreds of M60 Patton tanks, moving through the golden dunes and barren hills of the Sinai, throwing up huge rooster tails of swirling sand. Within days, Israel and Egypt are locked in one of the great tank battles of all time. The U.S. and Russia introduce a joint resolution at the UN calling for a ceasefire. It is accepted, and the peace talks begin. Another time of troubled peace. And in Jerusalem, a sacred city for Jews, Christians, and Muslims, life returns to near normal. Visitors come to see the Holy Land, men and women of all faiths from many lands, and the rebuilding goes on. Architect Moshe Shafty tries to save the old city, still make it function in today's world.
This is the site of the yeshiva, which is now under construction. When we started our excavation, we found crusader chambers and a Herodian aqueduct running right through it. These were not kept, and we are now proceeding well into the excavation for the construction. Right under us is under construction a major sewer tunnel, which is being dug in the rock, and it would pick up the Turkish sewer, which serves the old city, which in turn picked up the Roman sewer, and run it outside the old city into the modern Jerusalem sewer system.
The war cost Israel more than $4 billion and threw the nation into near panic before the Arabs were driven back. It destroyed the myth of Israeli invincibility and Arab ineptitude. The problems of the Middle East are far from resolved, but between wars, life moves on. It ran on Broadway for more than 500 performances, but the film version of the rock opera had to be cleaned up, with Mary Magdalene now little more than a friend of the family. John Simon said it was not the sort of rock on which to build either a church or a film. But no matter the critics, movie maker Norman Jewison did have fun making it. The camel never does get to see the film, but millions of moviegoers find it a perceptive and deeply religious experience. For the actors, though, nothing is sacred.
No. We gotta go do the crucifixion.
As the film crew predicted, everyone flocks to see it. Brando gets another Oscar in '73, and it's the year of his most controversial film, Last Tango in Paris.
The scene with the butter, the scene with the rat, that kind of thing, those scenes offend a lot of people. A lot of people like the film. They say it's the best thing Brando's ever done, and they applaud at the end. What do you think about the film yourself? I think it's really, really good.
Maria Schneider plays Jean, Brando's obliging nymphette. One critic says Tango is a casebook study in what he labels a cultural osmosis, a process by which serious directors draw off the pornographer's best stuff and put it to respectable uses.
But we can't see it in Switzerland, so that's why I came over.
I really thought it was a fabulous experience.
It's unusual, and it's really saying where it's at today.
Under the guise of a great masterpiece, we're seeing a fantastically capable director making fun of us.
It bored me, but I thought it was beautifully made.
Fantastic.
Director Bernardo Bertolucci says he considers Brando co-author of the film, yet quotes Brando as having said when the shooting was finished that he'd never again put himself into a film as completely as he did with Tango. The good old days of shoot-'em-up westerns seem over in 1973. It's hard to do a cowboy and Indian story. The Indians won't play the bad guys anymore. Even the idea of a real hero has come into disrepute. There are a few escapes left, but even that is changing. We now see woman as victim, man as victim, horse as victim, all of us hanging on by a thread. '73 finds movies in the midst of a financial comeback, an invasion by young people, and many changes in the technology. Critic Judith Christ.
Whether it's on 8mm or 70 or 35 is irrelevant. It is, for me, from my critical viewpoint, what have you to say on that film and how are you going to use the tools?
Another critic, Pauline Kael, says,
much in the past 30 years. I mean, there's a cyclical nature to movies, and types of movies that we thought were old-fashioned can come back and sweep a new generation that has never really seen them that way.
Go!
Movies are very good in bringing out the undercurrents of society. And sometimes that's represented by a star. I don't think we'll see the end of stars because stars are the basic human material that people go to movies for. I mean, and, you know, whether you call them stars or whether you simply call them people who have greater intensity of life in them, they are the people you want to watch on the screen. And, you know, the force of a personality holds you all the way through. Well, the director realizes that that's a life and death difference in a movie because the life that binds the movie is still often the star.
All those kids who used to go into the other arts, the brightest kids in America, the ones who used to become the architects and the writers and the poets, they're now going into movies. And I think they're going to bring new, more complex kinds of sensibility into movies.
Right there. You have to nod your head in acknowledgement. Okay, and then go on into the distance.
And so we look to the youth of our times.
No, you gotta have her white shirt.
I know them you close up to the white shirt because I can't stab you know inside.
I
know them you close.
Go. Okay.
Chaucer probably wouldn't recognize the version of his Canterbury Tales that will emerge from this film effort, but then he won't be the first author to have that problem, whether at the hands of the old filmmakers or the new.
Okay, now, Tommy, remember, when I say light, it means nothing. When I say action, you start running. When I say camera, he goes on. Okay, get back there.
Will he get it right this time? It's a crazy year for fashion, and sometimes it's hard to tell a chapeau from a neighbor's garden, or maybe the dessert counter at your favorite delicatessen. The big news this year is hats. Through history, hats have been used to preserve modesty, to protect one from the elements, to indicate social status, or sometimes, as here, simply to enhance one's appearance. You'll notice that hemlines have been stabilized, at least for a time, at knee level. Music has been called an instrument of God, and that may account for the success of Seals and Croft, who've embraced the Baha'i religion, sung about it, and given much of their income to the newfound faith.
Boing, and the bell rang when I read that one line, and what an entirely different change Baha'i made on us musically. O Son of Man, I love thy creation, hence I created thee. Wherefore do thou love me, that I may name thy name and fill thy soul with the spirit of life.
Is it bubblegum rock or cradle rock? By whatever name, the young, God-fearing, sweeter-than-thou male adolescent music star is a multi-million-dollar business. Donny Osmond and Puppy Love. TV's Partridge Family created David Cassidy as the newest dreamboat. And the fan magazines, Fave and Star and 16 and Tiger Beat, they tell the kids what their hero wears to bed and how to get a pillowcase with his picture on it. The stars keep getting younger and younger as kids decide they really can't trust anyone over 15. Enter René Simard. At 13, Quebec's topper to the trend. He makes about $200,000 a year, and he gets $7 a week spending money, hardly enough to buy his own records.
Merci beaucoup.
Come on. Woo! And up we go, way up and up she rises.
A new craze, hang gliding.
I can see for miles and miles. Can see for miles and miles. starting a slow bank to the left. Oh, pretty air. Pretty day. Just gonna bring her slowly around. Beautiful. Oh, incredible, just incredible. Okay, I'll bank her over.
In its birthplace, California, there are 4,000 hang gliders in 73. James Bond tries it in his current flick. And Newsweek says it may be the fastest growing sport in North America.
Kick in between the rows of hay and gently down, and flare up. And beautiful!
Well, that's 1973. Hang in there.